Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's the CD guy, Johnny Z here. Thank you so much for tuning back into the channel, and today I'm going to be counting down the top 5 worst rock and metal albums of 2022. Earlier this week, I counted down the top 15 best rock and metal albums of 2022, so it's only fair that now I do the 5 worst. And, I was going to do a top 10 worst, but you know what? It's more humane for me to listen to 5 terrible albums back to back to back than listen to 10. Much easier for my sanity. So that said, let's get started here with my number 5. I'm going to go with Get Rollin' by Nickelback. And, of course, Nickelback, probably the most hated rock and metal band in the community, and, a lot of that hate is pretty undeserved, but, I'm personally not a fan of theirs, even though it has really become the cool thing to do over the years to hate on Nickelback. They have a few good songs here and there in their catalog, but really nothing for me, but their new album especially offers me nothing of substance here from the Nickelback camp, really nothing of note, aside from the lead single, San Quentin, which is a decent song, but this record really does feel like, a one-song album, and all the focus went to San Quentin, and the rest of the record is just a really unmemorable and flat effort from the middle-aged rockers here, so it definitely sounds like they're trying to fit into the 2022 pop rock scene, and just failing miserably as far as I'm concerned. I don't hate this record like I hate some of the other albums on this list, but I'm just pretty underwhelmed here by this album. Very flat and unmemorable, like I said, so that said, kicking us off with my number 5, I'm going to go with Get Rollin' by Nickelback. For my number 4, I'm going to go with a joint entry here with Kiss Off The Soundboard, live in Des Moines, 1977, and live at Donington, 1996. And, my big problem with the Off The Soundboard series is this. Obviously it's supposed to sound like a bootleg. It's a soundboard recording, supposed to have the charm of a bootleg, but think about the prices that Kiss are charging for these albums. It's definitely not worth it. On CD, you're looking at about, $20, $25 here for a glorified bootleg, right? On vinyl, it's even more. The pricing is just not fair and does not really equal the quality here, in particular the sound quality that you're getting on these Off The Soundboard releases. I've done a whole video talking about Kiss Off The Soundboard and why I don't think it's really worth it. I definitely regret picking this up. I'm never going to buy another Kiss Off The Soundboard again. The concerts are fine, right? Of course, classic Kiss, 1977, right? Prime era for the band. And then 1996, Donington was the reunion, the awesome reunion tour. But, they just don't sound all that great because they are glorified soundboard recordings. And, for Kiss, they obviously have the means to make these sound better, to spruce them up in the studio if they're going to, be charging, X amount of money. And when I say X amount of money, I mean, a pretty significant amount of money for a bootleg, So, considering Kiss went through all the trouble of releasing 2 fake, in-studio recorded Kiss Alive albums, they can easily spruce up the sound on some soundboard recordings if they're going to be charging that much. So, as far as I'm concerned here, the Kiss Off The Soundboard releases have been just one disappointment after another in regards to the sound. Obviously, I'm not expecting top-notch sound, but for what they're charging, they could easily make them sound a lot better than they have. So, that said, coming in at number 4 here, I'm going to go with a joint entry for 2 Kiss Off The Soundboard releases, that being live in Des Moines, 1977, and live at Donington, 1996. Breaking into the top 3 now we're getting into albums that I just can't stand. I'm going to go with Neon Zombie, the EP from Falling in Reverse, and, this is an EP from Falling in Reverse. Need I say more? I don't have to say anything else, it would already be on my list, I'm not a fan of Falling in Reverse. I'm less of a fan of Ronnie Radke as a person, and I find this EP to be very unmemorable and underwhelming, and musically, I always found Falling in Reverse to be, opening band level, giving off that big opening band energy, and this album, I feel the same way about this record here from a musical standpoint. Between the juvenile lyrics here throughout, and Ronnie Radke being one of the most unlikable people in rock, this album is a hard pass for me, and again, not a Falling in Reverse fan, really can't stand them, and this EP is no different. Next to number 2, oh god help me, it's Mainstream Sellout by Machine Gun Kelly. The fact that I even have to include Machine Gun Kelly on any list relating to rock music is bad enough, it's ridiculous to me. But the only reason that I'm including him on this countdown is because this album charted at number 1 on the Billboard US Top Rock Albums list, and was even nominated for Best Rock Album of the Year in the AMAs, which thank god Ghost beat Machine Gun Kelly out and won that award. But, I'm going to use this entry as an opportunity to talk about how low the standards have become for, mainstream rock and, all these alternative artists that are passing as rock musicians now. Let me just say, Machine Gun Kelly is not a rock musician. As a matter of fact, calling him a musician at all is being generous, He tries to subscribe to that, punk rock imagery and lifestyle, and just completely falls flat and shows just how, talentless he really is. This album is not a rock record, and, I really can't stand it. I can't really stand anything Machine Gun Kelly ever released. This record sucks. There's no listenable quality to it at all, and, I will never in a million billion years listen to this album again. Not for $1 million. If one thing, it's made me afraid of my own ears. I'm never going to listen to this album again. I heard it on Spotify because I'm definitely not going out and buying this album, and I instantly regretted it. A terrible record here from an awful musician who shouldn't even be in consideration for any rock list, but again, the standards have become so low for the mainstream rock artists that Machine Gun Kelly passes as rock nowadays, which is really, really sad. And finally, coming in at number 1, I'm going to go with Afterlife by Five Finger Death Punch. Now, Five Finger Death Punch fans, I know, a lot of fans tend to feel a certain way when people criticize the band. And I just want to say that if you're somebody who feels the need to write me an essay down in the comments section about how I'm an idiot and I'm wrong and Five Finger Death Punch are great, just take a deep breath, count to 10. It's just my opinion. Your opinion is totally valid as well. There's no need for hate comments, which I'll delete right away anyway. I'm not a Five Finger Death Punch fan. I never consider them to be all that great of a band to begin with. As a matter of fact, I consider them to be pretty overrated, and, they've managed to ascend into the mainstream over a lot of other talented musicians and bands that are making great music at the same time. So it's just mind-boggling to me as to how they managed to have Megadeth open for them on tour a few years ago, and again, not a Five Finger Death Punch fan. Very underwhelmed by this album. It's their 9th studio album and the follow-up to F8 from 2020. For me personally, this album is a lot of what I dislike about the band. Repetitive, bland tracks and poor lyricism, and I mean that seriously. Reading the lyrics to this album is mind-numbing, I'm also really not a fan of Ivan Moody's voice, and I think the band have really fallen off, when looking at some of their past releases. Their first couple albums are pretty solid, not bad at all. But then after that, they really fell off, and, up to this point now, it's a very uninspired album, with the band offering nothing different or even taking a single risk here on this record. It's a very safe album, and I don't mean that in a good way. There are some bands who are able to follow a very tried-and-true formula throughout their entire careers, and that's fine, but, Five Finger Death Punch, for me personally, are just not one of those bands that can coast by like that. I'm not a fan of their music, definitely not a fan of the new record here. It's my least favorite album of 2022. So coming in at number 1, I'm going to go with Afterlife. So that wraps up my list, counting down the top 5 worst rock and metal albums of 2022, which should be visible right over here. And, again, if you're a fan of these bands, that's totally cool. For me personally, not a fan. So just sharing my opinions here. But if you're a fan, that's awesome. And, good for you. More power to you. But I'm just not a fan of these bands or these records. So if you enjoyed this video or if you agree with me, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel down below. Turn on the bell for notifications to be notified of a new upload. And let me know down in the comments below what is your least favorite rock and metal album of 2022. I'd be very interested in hearing your opinions. So let me know all that good stuff down in the comments. And until next time, it's the CD guy, Johnny Z, signing off. Take care, everybody.